thank you all so much for joining our community forum with the Mustard Seed Project of Key Peninsula. Please do keep in mind that this will be recorded and posted to both our Facebook page as well as YouTube for later viewing. We will have this set so that everybody is muted during the presentation. And if you have questions, please do put those in the chat box on Facebook or on Zoom. And I will go ahead and pass this over to Eric Blegan, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Heather, and thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Eric Blegan, as Heather said, the Executive Director of the Mustard Seed Project. And many of you probably know what we do, but for those who don't, our mission is to basically help seniors and to help support seniors to age in place in their homes. So we have a variety of programs that help support that, transportation, home repair, home cleaning up yards, friendly visits. And then our senior center at the Crandall Center in Key Center is where we have our classes. Gentle yoga just started yesterday, since we had to shut that down during the pandemic, but we started that up again, as well as Stay Active and Independent for Life sail class, which is really a lot of fun. So check out our website if you want to learn more. But it is my pleasure here to welcome Cannon Flores, who is a death doula. So she does really important work, which is help people in their final time to die well, and helps families support that as well. So really glad to have you here today, Cannon. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for just having me today, and I appreciate all of you that are here to share space with me today. My name is Cannon. I'm an end-of-life doula. I'm a volunteer with End of Life Washington, and I'm also the owner of The Grateful Death. The Grateful Death is an organization that offers support, guidance, and resources so that you can have a peaceful and meaningful end of life. I believe that our end-of-life experience is the last sacred expression of who we are. I also believe that end of life is a human experience and not a medical endeavor. When possible, it's been told that most people want to die at home, but unfortunately, a very small percentage of people are able to have that wish granted. So unfortunately, we have to do better, and that's really why I do the work that I do. And by doing better, that means educating and empowering families to bring the human experience back to the bedside. A century ago, we did not have the term death doula because we didn't need it. It's just what we did as community, as family members, as friends, as neighbors. We supported each other through this journey and through the end of life process. So my goal is really to dismantle the fear surrounding end of life by empowering and educating families to get comfortable and open up dialogue with each other. My doula practice is a lot like coaching. It's been my experience through all the bedsides that I've been next to at this point that the person that's dying really has an internal knowing of what's going on, and they make peace with their process. But the complexity comes in with the people that surrounds this person. And so I'm going to explain a little bit what a death doula does. And this is through my own lens. There are different types of doulas that do different types of work for their practice. Mine is really centered around coaching and normalizing the process. Sometimes I do get called to the bedside, quite often, but sometimes families just want that empowerment so that when the time comes, they can be the one at the bedside. So what does that mean? One of the most common questions that I get is, if I have hospice, why would I need a doula? And so as your doula, I am your advocate. I am your voice. One thing that will kind of summarize the difference between what a doula can bring to the bedside and what hospice brings to the bedside is doulas really bridge the gap between medical necessity and holistic comfort. So as your doula, I'm bringing a calming presence to your space, and I'm ensuring that that space is your sacred container. I am at the bedside we just got here we go. I just got a message, sorry, but I'm at the bedside when you need me, but I can also do this work virtually. And so bringing this calming presence doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be there in person, but it does mean that I'm going to be the voice when you don't have it. If you aren't comfortable having certain conversations with loved ones, or you have difficult family members that might show up at a delicate time, then I, as your doula, can absorb that. And so that your space remains sacred and calm and meaningful. I provide respite. I provide legacy work, planning, companionship, organizing, and resources. So there's a lot of variations of what I can do as your doula to prepare for your time, even if it's not near. Maybe you don't have a prognosis right now, but you want to be organized for later. Maybe you just want to empower yourself so that when your time comes, you can own your own end of life experience. Or maybe you know that you're going to be in a position where you're going to care for a parent or a loved one. So I help in facilitating difficult conversations with the people that surround you. And like I said earlier, really bridging that gap between the medical necessity and the holistic comfort. So holding vigil at the bedside, either in person or virtually, supporting an education with VSED and Death with Dignity. So my doula practice, it's just been that something that shows up for me quite often are people that are interested in doing VSED. And VSED is voluntary stop eating and drinking. There are several reasons why somebody would choose that method. And I am pretty well versed in supporting people through that process. I also am a volunteer with End of Life Washington. So I assist people with life-ending meds. So that's the Death with Dignity route. And unlike hospice, I have uncapped time. So if you have had any hospice experience with someone that you love, you know that they bring so much value to your end of life experience. I could never do the job that I do without them. And I have yet to partner with anybody that has not been on hospice. We really make the most beautiful partnership together. But hospice is busy. It is part of under the medical umbrella. They have a lot of patients that they have to see and a lot of things they have to do in a short amount of time. And as the doula, I don't have that. Typically, my practice, I work with one family at a time. And so my time is spent in the way that is most valuable to you and the people that surround you. And as you know, and as it becomes more evident, the older we get, time is your most valuable resource. It is unrenewable resource. And so having somebody that has the time to be a compassionate listener and hold sacred space for you and make a meaningful and calming environment sustained during your end of life experience, that you can't get with hospice. They don't have that type of time. I also want to talk about what a death doula isn't. I don't hasten death. So just because you explore your end of life options and maybe you are interested in creating a plan for yourself, that doesn't mean you're inviting death. So sometimes I do get questions about resources, which I can definitely provide resources for you if you have questions about options for ending your life on your own terms. But that is not something that I personally facilitate. I meet you where you're at and support you through your journey. In most circumstances, a doula is not a caregiver. It has been medically necessary for every client that I have worked with to date that they have hospice in place for a reason, because they are the medical side of things. So we're talking about equipment, medication, calming meds, bath aids, things like that. So I want to just really stress one thing. If you remember only one thing from my presentation today, I really want it to be that your end of life conversations are not meant to happen at end of life. One of the first things that people say to me is, I don't need your services yet, but, and I mean, the reality is we've been dying since the day we were born. It's the one guarantee that we have in this life. you're going to die and the people that you love are going to die. And so my whole goal in doing this work is to get rid of the stigma and the fear behind these conversations. I really strongly believe that we should be able to sit down at the dinner table and talk about end of life, just like we talk about what we did yesterday or how our workday was. The only way we're going to get better and be able to do more and have more deaths at home where it's peaceful and meaningful is to talk about it. When the people that we love understand what our wishes are and the dialogue is open, there's not as much stress at the end. A lot of what I do is just absorbing the tasks so that the family members can be their most present when the person that's dying is going through their process. Because what typically happens, and this is my story too, is we get overrun with emotions, and there's a lot of layers that start coming in. So you have family members that are calling, and you have people that want updates, and you're anticipatory grieving, and there's all these things that are happening, and at the same time you're missing out on being present for that person that you love so much, because we're so preoccupied on all of the things that are going on. And I created a document called The Grateful Death Intention, and this document was birthed from my own experience where I was in a situation just like what I just explained, and I didn't have the capacity to think of the questions that I really wanted to know. I didn't know how to create a meaningful experience because it was fast, it was unexpected, it was untimely, and my head was spinning, and I didn't think I was going to find myself in this situation at this stage in my life. And so this document was birthed from all of the questions that I wish I would have known to ask. I only knew my parents, who they were as my parents. I didn't know who they were before that. And so what this document does is it is a roadmap to who you are and what your life is before you have illness. And it's such a gift because if I had known the answers to these questions, I would have known how to set sacred space during that time, because I would have had it in writing. So this document is a $9.99 download from my website. And it's a gift that I want to give you complimentary today so that you can download it and start having those conversations with your loved ones. You'll be surprised. The thing that I've been the most surprised about is when I do these types of presentations, or I go into facilities, or I even just work with a family, people want permission to talk about end of life, but there's been this stigma surrounding it. And so we don't. And then we fear what we don't talk about. We don't talk about what we fear. So it's just this vicious cycle that keeps going. And so having this document is actually quite fun, if you will. It's a creative way to open dialogue and to take the stigma away. And so if you're interested in that document, you can have it complimentary. You can send me an email at crystal@thegratefuldeath.org. And I think I'll put that in the chat so you can see that. I also wanted to, if I can figure out, share some of the bedside vigil work that I have done with families. So bedside vigil means that I am at the bedside or even virtually supporting a family while their loved one is going through their dying process. And I make these mandalas as part of the vigil. And what it does is it helps me to get connected with the person's breath or the person's energy level. It just is a way to really calm the mind and do something that is dedicated to this person that is loved so dearly. What the mandala represents is never-ending love. This one that you're looking at right now is the very first mandala that I did at the bedside. And this one holds a lot of meaning because it organically came together. And at the very last stone that was placed, she took her last breath. And so it was pretty magical. This is a huge mandala that's, I don't know if you can see my hand in the corner, but this was a mandala that I created as a dedication to my own mother. So I will stop that share screen. And I will turn it over to Heather for any questions that you might have.
All right, so I do not see any questions yet on Facebook Live, but I know that Eric had a question or two.
I was just gonna, first of all, thank you, Crystal. That was really, really lovely. And I'm certainly going to go and send you an email and get what you talked about, the
Great.
grateful death intention. I mean, what you said there, you know, those end of the life conversations shouldn't be happening right at the end of life. They need to happen before that. And I think we all kind of know that, but it's really helpful to hear that from you.
It's one of those things that you don't know until you're in it. And then when you're in it, you're just so blindsided by everything that's coming at you. And so that's the whole goal here, is to open up that dialogue and make it comfortable.
And another thing that really resonated, we don't talk about what we fear, and we fear what we don't talk about, and that does create a cycle there that needs to be interrupted if you want something different than that. So thank you for that too.
Yeah.
I guess one of my questions is, you know, how big of an area do you serve? You're in Seattle, right? Or the Seattle area?
I'm in Seattle, but I service people everywhere. I just came back from a trip to Pennsylvania, of all places. I didn't know, I had not ever been there before, but that's where I got called to go. And so sometimes people don't need in-person support. Sometimes they want in-person support. I can do a lot of this work virtually because, like I said, typically in my experiences, the person that's dying, they have this internal knowing. They know what's happening. It's the people that surround this person. This is where the complexities come in, because everyone is trying to understand what's happening, but the person that's dying is doing their own processing. And so normalizing that is what brings a sense of calm to the environment, and creating a space where people feel comfortable asking the questions that they didn't know they could ask, normalizing it. And so that can be done virtually as well as in person.
It probably creates a dynamic where, I mean, the person who's dying might want to protect the people who are around them, and vice versa. And if you have the conversation beforehand, you don't need to have to worry about that so much.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, I've had more than one situation that's like this, where the person that's dying says, make sure you don't tell my daughter that I'm dying. And the daughter says, make sure you don't tell my mother that she's dying. So this is very common. That's a very common example. We do a lot to protect our loved ones. And the dying process, because we don't talk about it, when we get there, we feel this need to protect the people around us, and then they feel the same. And so because of that, there's all this barrier that blocks a really healthy conversation that would actually bring more peace. So that's my job.
Have any questions come in, Heather?
No.
On Facebook?
No.
Okay. One other thing I just wanted, this reminds me what you've been talking about. I at some point in the last year or so, I heard a story on National Public Radio about a movement creating sort of death dinners, you know, inviting people over to your home just to talk about this. Is that something that you've done or been involved in, or just?
I'm pretty familiar with it and the organizations that do it. I haven't done it myself formally, but I will tell you that the dinner conversations in my house are, I mean, there was a point in time where I would get, Mom, can we talk about something else tonight? But that's the whole point now, is that it's so comfortable in my family that nobody bats an eye when I talk about, you know, water cremation, or, hey, did you know this was available, or that, or human composting. So that's the whole goal, is to just make it normal. And I love that concept, death over dinner. And there's so many great things now, because we are in a movement. I mean, the ball is in motion, which I'm so grateful to be a part of, because nobody goes to career day and says, I want to work in death care. It's usually an experience that brings people to this work. And so once you're in that experience and you see the need and all of the holes, you can't help but want to step into that if you have that ability. And so to be a part of this movement and see it evolving, and conversations and organizations stepping up to really normalize it, it's such a blessing.
And, of course, it's a huge paradigm shift from where we were in the
Yes.
20th century and where we are mostly now too, but just kind of hiding from all of these difficult conversations as opposed to
Right.
tackling them.
Right. It's true.
Heather, do you have any questions, or Jen, or any?
Well, I have so many questions. I honestly wish I had this kind of a service that I knew about it during the passing of my father. We had really supportive caregivers, but there's something different when somebody can just be there and hold that space with you. So I just am so grateful to have you here today to be talking about this. I wish everybody could, enable this type of service, in the passing of their loved ones as well as for themselves.
And that's why it's so valuable to have things like this, because when we're in those heightened emotions, we don't realize there's resources available. And the people that surround this person want resources so they can be helpful, but there's so much happening that that's the last thing you're thinking of. Who could help me? You're just trying to get through each hour of the day. And so that's why these kinds of things are so important. So I'm so grateful that you open up this opportunity for these kind of talks.
Yeah.
It reminds me, one of our first forums was with Brianna Cross-Bean, who is an attorney who specializes in elder law, and emphasized how important it is to have a plan, legally at the end of your
Yes.
life. And this is obviously just, or if not more important, to have these kinds of conversations too. So really appreciate your doing this work. That's really important. And if anybody, so it's gratefuldeathintention.org.
So it's Crystal at thegratefuldeath.org. And then that's my email address. And then I'll just attach the document for you. You can print it out. It's kind of fun. I redo mine every once in a while because it's just kind of a fun project. And also your wishes change and things evolve and you want something different than you wanted maybe 5 years ago. So it's a great little conversation starter. It's a great way to involve the people that you love, and it's non-threatening because it's just the story of you. That's essentially what it is. I would have loved to have known some of these answers to these questions. And when that opportunity is gone, it's gone. And so it's such a gift to have somebody create this for the people that will be surrounding you and be wondering, how can I create this sacred space for this person that I love so much?
Mm-hmm. So just powerful.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. And Heather, would you like to tell folks about our next one coming up, or unless there are any other questions?
I don't see any questions. We've got some likes, but yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today, Crystal, and sharing this really amazing presentation. And our next community forum is August 19th, and that is going to be with Chris Dowling from the Aging and Disability Resource Center based out of Tacoma, and she'll be discussing services available to those in Pierce County. So that'll be coming up in 2 weeks.
And we would love to have you back sometime, Crystal.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super grateful.